Hey guys, this is Captivating Women LLC. Thank you all for joining in on our podcast. My name is Takira, aka T, and we have.
I am April, guys. So glad to be here. I'm glad you guys are joining us today. It's going to be a fun and interesting topic.
And I'm Keisha. Welcome back, guys. Thank you for sticking with us. We're really excited for today.
Yes, and unfortunately, our other girlfriend, Shari, is a little bit under the weather, so
Get well soon.
she is not going to be able to join us, but you'll be able to catch her next time.
She's with us in spirit.
Yes, always. All right, so we wanted to just kick things off. It was Valentine's Day weekend.
Whoop,
Woo woo! You
A day
know,
for
the
love.
love weekend. So, Keisha, were there any hot topics that you can sort of introduce for us today?
Not necessarily a hot topic, but, you know, during my free time, I like to scroll through the IG.
Yes, you do.
Stroll through the streets of IG. And I saw lots of overt displays of affection, which I love. I'm a lover.
Me too.
And I saw Lori Harvey was gifted, as well as some other young ladies, were gifted with beautiful bouquets of roses, rose petals infesting the area
That sounds
all
really
over the
nice.
place.
Festing, girl.
Yes, infested.
Infested
You
with
know.
rose petals.
I'm sure it smelled beautiful in there. I love the smell of roses.
Yeah.
Girl, they had candles too, I think. if
Yeah,
I saw right.
everything.
Yeah.
Oh, I
You
totally
know.
missed that, but I'm totally down for it. Somebody
Really?
doing that for me.
Me too. Me too. I thought about that the other day, and I'm like, nobody has ever laid out some rose petals for me.
It's coming, girl.
Put
It's
it in the
coming.
bath. Keep it in the
I'm
bath.
sure somebody wants to.
I'm
though.
sure they do.
I know.
I'm sure they do.
Thank you. So I got to do it for myself.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So it just got me thinking a little bit, like, what we deserve as women, what we tolerate.
Yeah.
You know, there is a significant age gap between Miss Lori Harvey and Future that I find a little
What is
interesting.
the age gap?
Enough. I know that it's significant.
Like, are we talking
and
10 years, 5 years?
I know that I think she's in her early 20s.
Yeah, she's
Okay,
definitely
yeah.
early 20s.
Yeah.
I don't know how old
not
Future is.
not old, but he, despite the age, he also has lived some life
He's lived some
and
life.
made some lives.
Yes, he
You know,
has. A
that-
lot
made
of
several
lives.
lives.
That's true, and no judgment. But I know that I had heard.
Well,
that
some
he has
people need
5
some judgment.
Some people do.
people
That's
need some
true.
judgment.
I had heard that he had 5 kids with 5 different baby mamas, and so I know that there was a lot
I
of
think
talk.
there's more than 5.
Really? Well, I think there was
Yeah.
probably one on the way.
Yeah.
And then given that Lori Harvey's, father or stepdad is Steve
Yeah.
Harvey, and he's brought out that book about
Okay.
relationships and having standards and all that stuff. I know that she's been, kind of, people have been judging her a little bit.
Well, did she
for-
use the book? Because she's got them sprung. Maybe she used the book.
That's a good point. That's a good
true.
point.
Maybe
You know
she
what?
did use
She
the
got the
book.
tools.
That's
I'm
why
not
she
even
got that
gonna lie,
rose petal
like,
infested area.
When I heard the situation with her, I wasn't even mad at her. I was like, finally, these men are getting a dose of what they
Yeah.
practice on a daily basis with
Yeah.
us. So
Yeah.
I kind of applauded her. I'm not even going to lie.
Wow.
I was
know?
a little disgusted.
You were?
I wasn't disgusted by her. I was just disgusted by the mindset and the unfinished state of his life. Paternity suits
Yes.
and the back
Yes,
and
it feels
forth.
murky.
Yeah, that and the condition of the women that he's left.
Yeah.
The
And she's
condition
so
that they're
beautiful.
in.
She's so
right.
beautiful.
I know. I'm not applauding her with the situation with him, but like
Yeah.
how they saying, oh, she's bouncing around from man to man. I feel
Yeah.
like in a
She's
dating
living.
relationship, you're trying to
And
see
she-
if there's
Yeah.
a good fit. And
That's
I heard
true.
she was recently engaged,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
dissolved. So I know how it is when you get out of a
She just needs
relationship.
to bounce a little higher, though.
She does. She does need to bounce a little higher.
Bounce a little
But
higher.
But
Lori-
you hear a lot of stories about men conforming for that
That's
one
true.
woman.
And I gotta
So-
think she's 23 because when I was
Yeah.
23, I did date some
and
guys that were
I
not
doubt
bouncing
that she's
very
gonna
high.
conform to him, but
You
but
doubt
no, I don't think so. I think she's probably having a little bit of fun. She's
Yes.
young.
He
She's
seems
beautiful.
fun.
You
There's
know
a
her
lot
mama
of
sat her
men
down
who-
and looked at her and was
Okay.
like, spoke through the eyes.
No, but her mom has a history of dating Thug.
She does, but
so-
I
so
think
she's
she has
like,
a history of dating some kingpins. I don't know.
That's true. That's
This is true. This is true. But I
Allegedly.
think this is a really good segue, though, to our topic for today. So we have 2 topics that are related that we wanted to talk about. And the first one is a seat at the table, a.k.a. knowing your worth and what you have to offer in a relationship. And the other one related to it is returning to your vomit.
Ooh.
Trapped
Like
in
a
your
dog.
negative patterns. Like a dog.
Like a dog. Eat their vomit.
So I wanted to kind of kick us off with a seat at the table. Like
Yeah.
when I think of a seat at the table, it's funny because my mind immediately goes to a work mode.
Oh, I go to
Like,
Solange.
oh, really? No.
I go to
that too.
Solange.
So, like, I immediately think of like this conference room, like executive conference room with this long table where you have these major players that are coming to share like information. And I know that, most people think of Solange because she had that album, A Seat at the Table. But when I think of a seat at the table, I think of somebody who has something that they have to, they're coming ready for a situation that they know that they have a contribution to. And so when I looked up a seat at the table meaning, and what I saw was the seat at the table is reserved for those who are considered to have both the influence and power to make decisions. So then if you then take that and bring it to a relationship, if you approach a relationship knowing your worth and your value.
My mind is going.
Yes. Like, what does that look like? It's like you're coming to that relationship knowing that I have a seat at this table and I belong here. I know what I have to offer. I know what my qualities are. And this is something of value to somebody else.
The problem is a lot of women today don't even feel like they have a seat at the table in their relationships.
Yeah.
They feel like the man dictates the pace, the flow, the content, the status of the relationship, and they're just waiting. And that is very reflective on their sense of self-esteem.
It does, but I
think
wonder.
that, but I also think it's tradition. Traditionally, it's been set up where it has been the man that kind of dictates the way that the relationship.
And
But
what
is
was
it
the
because
state
of a
of the
respect
women?
thing? I wonder if
and
it's
the
because
women didn't. They left. If you go back historically, they left from their parents' house right into marriage.
Yeah.
So there really wasn't. Was there? I guess would be a question.
Yeah.
A development of who they were as individuals.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But maybe too, I think that maybe they felt that is like, I could see somebody easily kind of stepping back if they feel that historically a man is supposed to assume that sort of leadership role. So they defer everything to them, not really recognizing that they should be empowered to sort of speak their truth and voice their opinion in a relationship.
But you know what the problem with that is I feel like now we're in a situation where we have the potential for codependence to really rear its head because you don't have a true sense of identity.
Yeah.
You're now merging with someone and most likely you'll take on their identity.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
healthy relationship is interdependence, and that's where I am who I
Absolutely.
am.
Yeah.
You are who you are. We come together and now we're in a relationship, but even deeper than that, we form a partnership.
Yeah.
And I
yeah.
think that's kind of,
Right. And I think that if you approach a relationship not really knowing who you are as a woman or as a person in general, you can tend to fall into those negative tendencies and patterns and, accept a relationship or a man any old kind of way.
So
right?
let's talk about that. Why? Why do some people struggle with that?
With what exactly?
With seeking relationships for validation, seeking relationships to fill a hole instead of really being comfortable with being by yourself and coming into yourself and then entering a relationship.
I think that's a good question. I think people are looking for that relationship just like they do in life to fulfill like some sort of need. Sometimes relationships can temporarily fulfill a need.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Yeah. Just like any substance, anything.
Yeah, just like any substance.
Yeah.
So, that's a good question. I don't really have the answer to that just yet. What do you? I'm going to turn to my partner over here.
left.
I got to mull over that one for a bit.
To be honest, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think people feel like it's going to fill the void. And I think a lot of times what they realize is that they enter into a relationship thinking it's going to fill the void, only to be left feeling even more isolated if the partner isn't meeting the exact areas where the void needs to be filled. And that once again just creates an extremely unhealthy scenario because like Will Smith said, it's not my job to make Jada happy.
Yeah.
Jada has to be happy. And
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. As women, we have to take responsibility.
Yeah.
And I sound super passionate right now because I
No,
am.
because that
into
is
it.
For
passionate.
our happiness, you know what I mean? And I think when we enter happy into a relationship,
When was that moment for you?
where I reached a level of, to be honest with you, it's been an ongoing journey. I will say this. I used to, as a young kid, feel like I was going to be married and needed to be married by the time I was
Oh,
25.
yeah, girl.
And
We all
28,
did.
right?
Had our
And I
whole
was
lives
serious
mapped
about
out.
that thing.
Yeah.
But at 28, 25, I didn't have a true sense of who I was. I want to say, to be honest with you, it was a process. And I feel like at 30 is when it kind of clicked for me that, you know what?
Yeah.
You have work to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
In order to get yourself to a place where you're happy with who you are.
Yeah.
You're confident in who you are.
Yeah.
Because I think any time before that, if I had have yoked up with someone, it would have been a recipe for disaster, because there wouldn't have been a wholeness in me that I can say that I have now.
Right. And I think that if as people or individuals rather, we approach relationships coming to it as a whole person, then we would have a lot more success in those relationships.
Of course.
Right?
You know what came to me the other day? So funny. I was going to text you ladies. I was driving, and that's when a lot of stuff, I think that's when God speaks to me, when it's just in that state. And I was going to kind of piggyback off of your answer to that question about when was that revelation to you where you really had to dive into yourself and to be confident within yourself. I've been single for the past 2 years now, really out of a situationship. And then before that, broke up with a significant relationship in 2014. So I would say since then, I haven't had a serious relationship. And when I was driving, I was kind of thinking about all of like the doubts that go into your head when you're single for a long time. Like, man, what is this me going to look like in a serious committed relationship?
Right.
Like,
I go through that
am I going to be able to sacrifice it? Because that's what you hear a lot from people. Like, are you going to still be selfish? Are you going to be?
Right.
It's like, well, I'm not selfish
Setting your
now. Why would I be
patterns.
selfish then? And what came to me, it was like, no. You are observing people's behavior in their relationships now. You are getting more intel. You're getting more in touch with yourself. You're getting more in tune with behaviors that do not work in relationships.
Yeah.
So you're going to be better off because you're not going to have the baggage from those experiences that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And you're also seeing that it's not working.
Right.
So when you do get in a relationship with a person that's going to be on the same level and frequency as you, having the same tools, you're going to be at a different state. You're going to be at a different state to be able to succeed.
But that's why I want to emphasize women putting in the work.
Yeah.
And I sound like a broken record, and y'all going to continue to hear me sound like a broken
It's
record.
okay. Break it.
We can't just sit here and say, I'm single, woe is me.
No.
Where's the man?
No.
There has to be a commitment to the process
And you know what happens?
of developing who we are
Exactly.
on top of learning from the experiences that we see so that we can shape ourselves.
And what I always tell like my single friends, one of the things that I had to do personally was look at who is it that I want it to be in a relationship or even a marriage. What does that look like to you?
From the outside, Michelle
and
and
if
Barack.
you have any gaps in who you want yourself to be versus who you are right now, then you need to be intentional during this season of singleness and working on those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the singleness season is not supposed to be a sit back and wait for somebody to come to you.
No.
This is the time for you to work on yourself and really work on the value and the self-worth. Any issues that you have, you need to be working on it now.
Yeah. I think that I got to a place of real acceptance of the state that I am and okay with whatever happens next.
Yeah, that's so powerful
and
too.
Yes, because I know that if I do encounter a situation, I'm not just talking about relationships, because I even find myself with this confidence at my job too. If I'm not comfortable with something, I will say it. I'm not letting it ride. I'm not letting it just kind of fester in me and go to sleep and I can't sleep at night and kind of think it over. No, I'm going to say it. I'm going to let it known. And what I find is that people respond so positive to that. Like I do notice more people kind of like coming around because people are attracted to strength.
They are.
And confidence.
But also what it does is, and I've done the same thing, it sets boundaries for people and it teaches people
without you even saying anything. You don't even have to say your boundary.
Handle you, because otherwise,
because you handle yourself well.
Handle yourself well. Otherwise, people will do whatever.
And
so
whatever.
you have to set the boundary for yourself. Like I said, without even saying it, you're setting people know
so
how to operate.
That brings me to another question, because the boundaries, you set up boundaries in any type of relationship, your friendships, a relationship in marriage. So what are ways in which you guys in the past have set up boundaries in your relationships?
I didn't, and I let things go. when they happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of would be the one to kind of mull over it a little bit and let it kind of really affect me.
So if there was an issue that happened, you wouldn't really address it. You would
Not
just
right
kind
then.
of allow it to happen, and
Not right then. It would kind of morph into something else,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which a lot of people, that's what happens.
Yeah.
It comes into something else and it snowballs, and then they project it on, and then it's like, I'm sorry I didn't do the dishes, but you're over here crying about.
Wait, guilty.
Yes,
I used to
right?
do that too.
Put your hands up.
Yes. I'm not even gonna lie. I did the same thing. I basically would get mad and blow up, over stuff that happened weeks before because I never addressed it. So
and that's what I had to get to that point where that didn't feel good, and I didn't want that feeling anymore. And I really turned the lens internal. Like, I stopped thinking about what is this going to look like for somebody else in the relationship with me. I had to build that relationship with me and know that I was worth this investment. You know.
Now, let me ask you this. What stopped you from addressing that at the time? Do you feel like were you afraid of what the repercussions would be in bringing that to the table?
I'm going to go all the way to a deep level because I really analyzed this.
Okay, good. We like deep.
Yes, two things stopped me. Just fear of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had to think, why was I so fearful of confrontation? And then I had to think about myself as a little girl and how I would handle conversations with my father.
Yeah.
And my conversations were more so me receiving a lot of information and being quiet and not saying anything and being really timid because out of fear of the bigness of his personality. My dad is like a strong but silent type, and if he's upset at you, you know it, you feel it shifts energy. It's really intense.
That's
and so me not knowing kind of how to handle that growing up, it came out in my relationships.
Isn't that so interesting how that first male figure in your life sort of sets the tone for your other relationships with men?
Of course.
Absolutely. I have a similar story, and I was talking with T about it actually earlier. It's interesting because for me, I was trying to identify some negative dating patterns. And one thing that I realized for me is I used to go after emotionally unavailable people. And I had to dig down and figure out, girl, like, these people ain't giving you nothing. Why are you constantly
Skeletor, bones, dead.
Diving for these people that are giving you nothing? But like you said, when you finally realize that there's a problem, because you got to first realize there's a problem. That's number one, y'all. Realize there's a problem. And once you realize there's a problem, you have to find out what's the source. And for me, like most women, it goes back to daddy. And so my daddy is a great guy. He's a good guy, but there were some areas where there was deficit. And one of them was the ability to be emotionally open and transparent. So that's all I knew. And so then I further went and I asked myself, well, April, did you have a low self-esteem? No, but I had no exposure to what emotional intimacy and connectivity looks like. It wasn't until I was dating a guy that used to stop me in the middle of the conversation and he would say, we're not talking about me tonight. We're talking about you.
Ooh, I like that.
And I was like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? It was a game shifter because what it did was it allowed us to emotionally connect on a different level. So now it gave me something to compare what I had been experiencing as I was developing, to what this young man was offering me. And now I'm at a point where there's no way in God's green earth I can date a man who won't give me a certain level
now
of
you know what that feels
because
like.
now I know what it looks like.
That's what it feels like. And it's so funny because on the flip side, my experience was a little bit different. I'm the only girl out of 3 boys. And my parents always reminded me that I was the only girl, so I was treated like a princess growing up. I mean, not in the sense that I got everything that I wanted.
You got a lot of emotional needs met.
I got a lot of emotional needs met from both of my parents, especially my dad, because I was the only girl. So the issues that I had in the past relationships was approaching a relationship from a princess mentality where I felt that a man needed to treat me a certain type of way, which I feel is still important, but I didn't always feel like I needed to reciprocate that.
Yeah.
And that's where I had to do my own personal work in, you know, outside of relationships and making sure that I'm coming to the table, you know, in the same way that I'm expecting a man to come to the table.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So
y'all
I think
gotta
that's
figure out
really
your daddy issues.
No, and
No.
it's true. And I've told so many of my friends that it's like you
And
have
mama
to
issues.
revisit that.
That's true. Girl, listen to the podcast.
Both.
Yes.
You have to go back to identify where that issue stemmed from, right? So you and sometimes it's painful to go back to those areas.
It is painful
you know?
because how we're hardwired. We are hardwired to avoid pain at all costs, and if we have to go back to those memories, it's clouded by the emotion. So a lot of the times we don't process because we don't want to feel the emotion attached to that memory,
Right.
and so we'll just keep going forward.
Keep going
It's more
forward,
comfortable though to stay how you are too.
It is.
It's just
Yeah.
more comfortable to say this is me.
This is
accept
who
me.
I am. And
This is who I am.
Until you realize that if you turn around and look, that you're not being successful in a certain area.
Right. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize
Yeah, they
that
don't.
they have a problem. And so that's
Until it's too late.
Until it's too late. You know what I mean? And so
right. So then that brings me to that question, like, how do you think people can get, because a lot of people are trapped in negative patterns. We've all
Therapy.
been there.
says the therapist.
But like, really, how do people get unstuck in those negative patterns? You know, and I wanted to bring up a few things because sometimes people don't know what negative patterns are, what they look like. And so there were a few things that I did some research on that I wanted to share. So, you know, if you find yourself in some of these areas, it's probably a negative pattern. Getting into relationships where you're always trying to fix or improve the person that you're with, you know, the projects. How many of us have
Broken
had those,
birds.
right?
Yeah.
The alpha person where you want to be in charge. You have to like be the one that's dictating that relationship.
Comes from lack of stability.
Yes. Okay. And then also dating people who are emotionally unavailable, not sharing your feelings for,
That comes from a lack of self-worth.
sake of the relationship.
Yeah.
And then also looking for that relationship, like you said, to sort of fix you, you
Yeah.
know, making excuses for bad behavior. So these are some of the things, like if you're seeing yourself in some of these situations, know that it is a negative pattern and that you don't have to accept that.
You don't have to accept it. And there's a concept that I remember years ago when I was in psychology class that Freud talks about, and that's repetition compulsion, where a lot of times we go back to something thinking that we can correct it and we can heal it.
I think that's
So it keeps us in a pattern of trying to heal, fix, fix. We can fix it. We can fix it. If I just work a little bit harder,
Yeah.
I can heal that thing.
Yeah.
And the thing is I think it part of healing comes from realizing, you know what, let me just stop. You know, let me stop. Let me identify what the problem is. And then let me move in a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you don't have to fix and heal everything. Fix you. Start
That's
with
what it
you.
is.
Fix you
Fix
and
you.
whatever that thing is that is you know, keeping
Triggers.
you triggers keeping you in those emotional patterns, or bringing your self-esteem down. Like some people, it might be education. Go and get that degree if that's what you need. Therapy obviously is always a really good choice. If you need to lose weight to make yourself feel better,
Feel good,
you know,
do it.
hire a personal trainer, get a partner at the gym, whatever it is that you need to do to feel better about yourself, do that thing, you know?
Yeah. We do have to identify the emotional blockage. That's where a lot of people get stuck. They don't know that their inability to lose weight comes from something else.
Yeah.
You know, or the fact that just like you, April, I did choose a lot of men that were emotionally unavailable too, and that was part of my self-worth because I felt like if I could fix them, they would have no reason to leave me, and then I'm worth being in a relationship with. And then turning that magnifying glass internal and realizing that I'm okay just as
You're
is.
enough.
You know, I'm enough,
You're enough.
how I am. Broken pieces together here.
Yep.
That's enough.
Right.
And that's worth all the love.
Right.
You know,
And walking away if somebody is not willing to accept that.
walking away.
So
And
much
that's
freedom
it.
in that.
That's
So
it.
much.
So wanted to ask, so you talked a little bit about some of the things that happened in the past. What are some of the standards and requirements now? You mentioned some. Talk a little bit more about what that is, what that looks like to you now when you approach a relationship based upon things that you've learned in the past.
I love the fact that I've gotten so comfortable with myself that I'm living my life in such a way that somebody could look at how I am treating myself and know what I deserve.
And you know what? I hear that. And that's the thing and it can be intimidating for a man. And not that the goal is not to intimidate a man, but it's to be you.
Yeah.
And like you said, it sets the tone for how you need to be treated.
And I'm
that's
okay
so true.
with those that are intimidated. Be intimidated. Be intimidated over there.
Intimidated.
I'm not for you.
I'm not for you.
I'm not for everybody.
I'm not. And I had to come to a place, and you know that in our journey of me telling you things that, you know, I felt like, is this too, do I have to dial back on this? Or should I do this? And you would always uplift me, encourage me, like, just stay true to yourself. And I really appreciate that. Thank you. I love you for that.
Yeah, because the right man is going to appreciate that about you.
Yeah. And that took some time, though. It took some time to be like, no, I shouldn't have to dial that back on this. I shouldn't have to feel like I have to edit this and monitor this. I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to live my life how I want to be treated. Yeah. And if this doesn't work for you, keep going.
Yeah, and that's very true. I would say for me, this is a small aspect, but it's really pretty big for me. A lot of women, don't give into this, but I really appreciate chivalry in a relationship.
Yeah, that's nice.
And it's probably because, of how my father was with me. And so, like, to me, it's not just...
Shout out to Daddy.
Then shout out to Daddy. To me, it's not a nice to have. To me, that is a requirement, because I feel like I need to be with a man who's going to treat me on the level of my father. Yeah. And I have one situation that happened to me back when I was in college. It's super small, and some people are going to misconstrue this and think that I'm a gold digger, but I'm going to tell it anyway.
Tell it. I'll break down the psychological aspect of it.
Right,
just tell it.
I remember I was dating this guy, and we were casually dating. We probably had gone on like maybe 3 or 4 dates. Super cool, not anything that was serious. But I remember we had gone to the movies, and then we went to pick up some food. And granted, none of us had money in college. We were all broke, So I remember we got to the we got to the drive-through, and he ordered his food, and then he asked me what I wanted. So I proceeded to tell my order, and then I remember we pulled up to accept the money, and he handed his money for his meal, and he looked over at me and was like, "You got money?"
Wait a minute.
I am not even kidding.
It would have been a Puff Daddy and that guy stare off.
I was literally just taken aback by that, and
I would have been taken aback too.
Right, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, even though we were dating casually at that moment in time, I knew, even though it was never something that I had said in my own head, that was a deal breaker for me, because to me, it said that he was going to put his needs before mine.
Yeah.
And so I remember after that time, it was like, I handed the money over, I paid for my own meal.
Thank God you had some money.
Thank God I had some money, right? Even though he asked me out on the date.
It's a bona fide date.
Girl.
This was a date. And I don't have a problem sharing that responsibility in dates, because, I don't expect
you don't have to put all these footnotes on it, okay? Don't put all these footnotes on it.
Girl, he could have paid for the burger.
Exactly. You're not asking too much for a $1 meal.
Yeah. And I remember I left, he dropped me off in my dorm, because that's where I was staying at the time. And he called me afterwards, and in my mind, I was like, that's not the type of guy that I can be with. I can't be with that type of guy. So that
I feel bad for that man.
I don't even know if I should call that man.
I wouldn't know that man if I saw him walking down.
He's learned from that situation. It probably didn't even mean anything to him. He probably had no idea why I stopped.
No, I'm sure it came up. I'm sure it came up in a later, different manifestation in a different relationship. We're talking about small examples that lead to bigger situations. I'm sure it manifested in his future relationship.
Yeah, hopefully he got it together. But I mean, that for me, that's one of the requirements. I want a man who's gonna give his last for me, or be willing to do that. That's really important to me, and really shows how he feels about me as a woman. So that's one of the requirements.
I think that's acceptable. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You like to be in your feminine energy. You feel really comfortable being taken care of. And the man that is going to get you is going to want that feminine energy, because you're going to provide him with something.
Let me just say, there's a lot out there.
Girl.
Oh, yeah, I know. And I've had several men
I've
had several men who are willing to do that. And it's funny
don't
because...
Get it twisted.
No, don't get it twisted, right, y'all?
No,
there is a line.
It's so funny because I usually also I think it's important to approach a relationship too in stating what those requirements are. So like I feel like that movie, I Think Like a Man, like I've told men in relationships, I really like the car door to be opened for me.
Yeah,
there you go.
And I've stated that, and most of them do want to do that. I only had one guy who I, wasn't considering as a true serious candidate.
Anyway,
who really kind of questioned me. He's
That
like,
one
for
filler?
real? Like, exactly.
That one filler. We all got a filler.
That one filler. He
Sorry
was
if I hurt your
like,
feelings.
for real, do you really want me to open the door? I'm like, yeah, I kind of want you to
do.
open the door for me.
He really asked you.
He ended up doing it, but like the ones who are serious contenders, they were happy to do it. So I feel like if you come to a relationship, a man who really wants to be with you is going to be willing to exceed those
rise
requirements.
to the level.
He will rise to the occasion, right? He will rise to the occasion. So, I think that's really good. So I think if you don't have a strong sense of self-worth, you're probably not going to be in a position where you feel comfortable in stating those requirements.
What did we post on IG this past Friday? The little caption, it said, if you don't love yourself, no one is going to love you.
That's
Nobody
true.
wants to love
You
somebody
set
that
the
doesn't
tone.
love themselves.
Yeah,
And
That's
that
true.
it is true, guys. You really have to dig deep. If you have to have a standard of how you live your life, that will teach the other person how to treat and love you.
Right.
And if you're used to treating yourself that way, you ain't gonna accept nothing
No.
less than.
No apologies.
Yeah.
No apologies.
Exactly. So I have another question. What are some of the sacrifices that you feel like you had to make that resulted from your commitment to maintaining your self-worth? Because I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the flip side. So for example, I know for me, what it might look like is being single for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Because I'm not willing to bring down some of my core requirements. You know what I mean? So I think that's important for people to sort of grasp once they start building their esteem and their self-worth and really knowing what they bring to the table and what they're willing to accept. There's some sacrifices that naturally come with it, because I know a lot of us want that relationship right now, and we're not willing to wait for that thing. So it might mean that you are waiting a little bit longer in that single phase. Right?
Yeah. Did you want to answer that first, April?
No, you can go ahead.
I'm gonna try to talk it through. Okay. I can tell you what it didn't look like. I could tell you what the lack of discipline in my life looked like.
Yeah.
It just looked very indulgent. It looked like a lot of relationships below my potential. The truth be told, that's how you do it when you're just trying to fill a void. There were some that were, they were all painful. They kind of, they add to insecurities.
Yeah.
You know that this isn't what you should be doing or entertaining your time with. So that's what it looks like. But when I just keep saying it over and over, when you turn the lens internal and you try to figure yourself out, why you make certain decisions, why you're at this stage of life making this choice over and over again, or why you're getting this outcome, and things that you want to change and what you want your life to look like, you start doing things differently.
Yeah.
You start cultivating other characteristics.
Right.
I became more disciplined. I became more empathic. I became more patient.
Yeah.
And became more accepting and realizing where I am is not a punishment.
Yeah.
Like, I'm having fun.
Yeah, and a lot
I'm
of people
having
look at it
fun.
and it is, and it's
You
like,
know?
it's not,
No, not at all. And marriage or relationships are not rewards for good behavior.
No.
Like, that's just
Not at
where
all.
you're destined to be right now. Right. Something needs to come through you and your partner and your bloodline right now at this moment in time. What is happening in my life looks different.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
I think, and I think for me sometimes it's put me in position, because I've already put myself in position for an uncomfortable situation. It further makes me a little uncomfortable, because I've had to have several uncomfortable conversations. Just
What?
really. Yeah. So you know how sometimes you put yourself in predicaments you already know, like you were just describing, that you don't have to be
Yes.
in.
Yes.
So some of the sacrifice I think
Yes.
that you some of the sacrifices that you expose yourself to are uncomfortable conversations, uncomfortable. You're
Unnecessary.
sacrificing your peace. That's
Yes.
the way I want to
Ooh,
put
yeah.
it together.
Yes.
You're sacrificing your peace,
Yeah.
trying to make something fit that doesn't fit. And so peace is something for me that's so pivotal. I want peace of mind.
Absolutely.
I want to go through life
and
not
that's what
stressed.
any future man is coming up against. Anything that is disturbing to my peace,
it's like a
has
trigger.
Gotta go.
It's like a red flag, right?
Yeah.
Where you know that that's not acceptable,
too much.
right? And you need to walk away from it. So I think also a sacrifice is walking away when you don't want to.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we all been in relationships where we really wanted that guy to really meet that expectation, and he's proved himself over and over again that he could not.
Absolutely.
And you had to sacrifice by walking away, even though it broke your heart.
Yes.
Even though,
girl, you already know. You're looking at me, and you already know that was the ending to the last situation.
Right.
Of course.
But I think that the power to do that really stems from the belief that you are worth it, and worthy, and that somebody is out there that can meet that. You
That's
know,
it right there.
And a lot of times we don't think that we can find it. I mean, how many times have we felt that ourselves, or we talk to other friends of ours who feel like, I don't think that he's out there, you know? So
that was my exact predicament. That was that every thought that you just explained went through my head, and I still made that choice anyway. I had to be okay with not knowing the outcome. Like I had to be okay, but I knew that wasn't it.
Yeah, you knew that.
I knew that treatment wasn't it, and I couldn't have that door be revolving, so I had to sever it and seal it and cement it.
And you did that, girl. You did.
Know?
You did that.
And walk away and not look back. And that was difficult, you know, because it's like in your head, you're like, well, what if? And you want to make excuses and want to see the brighter side and the best side and all that.
Right. And I have this quote that I think kind of touches onto that. It's by Trent, Shelton. And he says, you accepted less because you thought a little was better than nothing.
Exactly.
Which is deep, because that's really why we'll accept less. You know?
Yeah. And you are more than nothing. You're not anything close to nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's how we measure our self-worth, by somebody else wanting us instead of just wanting yourself. And and that was a thought that I had to tell myself. Like, I cannot try to hold on, white knuckle something more than I want myself and my peace of mind.
No.
And so that was
right.
it.
Peace, y'all. Peace is what we want to end on.
Right. So I guess the final question is, we want to leave our listeners with something. If someone does find themselves stuck in the negative patterns, so many of us have found ourselves in, what are some of the ways in which they can break those patterns? You know, because it's easy to find ourselves in it, but how can they, in practical ways, like, what are some of the steps that they can take if they're like in a relationship that, you know, they're sort of seeing the same things happen over and over again?
I would say get trusted counsel, right? A lot of the times when we're really in toxic situations, if you notice that you've kind of alienated yourself, the relationship has become more of your life than it should be, and that can be an indication of other things, controlling aspects of that relationship too. If you feel like relationships and friendships are now severed because of this relationship, but I would try to seek out some wise counsel to help you identify those patterns too.
Yeah.
Help you, people that you really trust their intention, to help you see that, you know, you're not like yourself. These are some things that I'm noticing within this relationship that I don't really think are healthy in that regard. And then from there, turning that lens internal, working on some self-love and some self-care, so you can have a more confident demeanor, because confident people make better relationship choices.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. And on top of it, y'all, I've had to, let's just get real, social media, I've had to block some folks. I've had to exit, I've had to deuce, and I've had to block.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes
what
just
are you feeding yourself?
What are you feeding? And sometimes you want to return back. You want to, you may not be talking, but you might stalk. Y'all hear me? You might stalk.
Because I put that thirst trap up.
Okay.
I've dropped a couple thirsts.
Okay, so me too. And that's why I'm saying you have to block, and that's one of the biggest things I feel like I want to take away. You have to do whatever you have to do for you in order to heal. Once you identify it, y'all exit.
Yeah.
And once, like, whatever that entails, blocking, blocking the telephone number, just
block.
exit. Okay.
And I would say a few things here is recognizing that the power is within you to make a change.
Yes.
Like, you have the ability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like the way something is going, you can stop that thing.
You don't have to stay there.
You don't have to stay there. One of the things that I was listening to that is like Keisha and my like adopted mama, Iyanla Van Zant.
Not on my watch.
Not on my watch. One of the things that she said I thought was really cool to do practically is affirmations.
Yes.
And so if somebody is really struggling with their, really recognizing their self-worth, one of the things that she mentioned was write a list of powerful I am affirmations. And we know that, even biblically, there's so much power in the tongue and basically the things that you speak over yourself. So she was like, you can get a list of 20 things that you say, maybe I am beautiful, I am worthy, I am worthy of having a successful and beautiful relationship. And actually going through that list and audibly saying those things. Yeah. And eventually, the words that you speak will become your reality.
Absolutely.
So that's helping you to find your voice.
Yeah.
Yes.
So finding your voice.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the things that I think people can do, practically, and if they wanted to sort of increase their value.
I love that.
And
start with the affirmation.
Yeah, start with the affirmation.
Because it is proven that the more you say something, the more you believe it. Then it changes you on a cellular level.
Right.
Because the more positive thoughts that you have, it reformulates the hormones.
Absolutely.
And you start producing a more healthy environment internally.
Yeah.
So,
and you attract healthier people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a,
exactly.
a big
I'm telling you.
It's a big full circle.
Yeah.
Yep. And the last thing I would say about that is don't give up. I had somebody tell me, well, each time I try and I keep falling back into this thing. And it's like, keep trying. Keep trying. You don't know. Maybe that 34th time is the time where that thing breaks and you really have the victory.
And realize it's like any other addiction. I think sometimes we don't realize that it's an addiction. We have an addiction sometimes to negativity and the negative patterns that we're in, and we have to break
gravitate towards what's familiar.
Yeah, what's familiar. And we have to break from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we really appreciate you all
Thank you,
taking
guys.
time out of your schedules to
Thank
listen
you.
to us. We definitely would love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
So, follow us on our IG page.
Captivating Women LLC, guys, and we're also on YouTube at Captivating Women. And y'all feel free to shoot us any questions you might have,
topics that you'd like us to talk about.
We'll dive deep.
Yes.
Yep. Love you all.
Thank you.
Right, and we're out.
Bye.
Bye.